Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to be planting some pre-chilled tulip and hyacinth bulbs in containers that I'm actually going to have indoors. I pre-chilled these bulbs in my refrigerator. I received these in the fall. I ordered them from Color Blends, and there's a video for that if you want to go to my playlist for bulbs. About how I got these bulbs in, how I handled them. In my area, I have to pre-chill tulips even in the ground because I'm in zone 7B. It just doesn't, our cold isn't long enough in the wintertime typically for tulips to get the pre-chill, get enough cold hours on them for them to perform well every year. So I pre-chill them. Some I leave I've planted a couple, I have a couple tulip planting videos as well you can look at where I planted them in the ground, but some I actually left, continued to leave in the refrigerator, and I cold treated them the entire length of time that they need to be cold treated, which for tulips is about 14 weeks. So they're ready to go. I can plant these anywhere, outdoors, indoors, doesn't really matter. They're ready to go. Same thing with these hyacinths. A lot of bulbs don't need cold treatment. An example of that would be this amaryllis. I have one amaryllis still flowering. It's very floppy right here, but I have one white amaryllis. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully that shows up well. Really, really beautiful. I had a lot of these, and I give these away as gifts at Christmas time. It's a great gift. Buy an amaryllis bulb in the fall and then plant it and then have it about budded up at Christmas and give them away as gifts. There's a lot of photos of these, of the ones I did at my house on my Instagram. I had red, pink, and white. That's the last one that's still blooming. But amaryllis, paper whites, those are two that you don't need to cold treat at all. You just buy those in the fall, plant them, and you're good to go. Really kind of quick and easy on those. And then there's bulbs that don't need a lot of cold treatment. Daffodils fall into that group. Daffodils are probably the best performing bulb outside in my area in zone 7B because they only need about maybe 4 weeks of cold, and that's adequate, and we always get that. And then they can take lots of cold, so they grow, as far north as you want to grow them. But if you were doing what I'm doing with daffodils, you'd put them in the refrigerator. You would have put them in the refrigerator maybe 4 weeks, and then forced them in a container, no problem at all. And then again, like I say, crocus need a little bit longer, but it's pretty easy to find how long a bulb needs to be cold treated before it can be forced easily and perform well. If you don't get enough cold treatment on them, they'll come up still, but they'll be, you won't get as big a flower, you just won't get as big of a show. Keep in mind, I am not showing you how to plant bulbs outdoors. This is not that video at all. Outside, on your tag on your bulbs, it'll tell you how deep you need to plant them, how much spacing you need. All of those things will be on the tag. These would have been placed 5 inches apart, and they'll ultimately get about 8 to 10 inches in height and go 5 inches deep into the ground on this Saints Parade hyacinth right here. That's how they would be planted outside, and I have videos for that. Indoors, we don't need to do that at all. We actually don't even need to cover these bulbs. You can put gravel, like this decorative gravel right here, in the bottom of this dish, maybe 2 inches deep, and just set the bulbs directly on top of that gravel with the pointy end up, and fill the water up right underneath the bulb where it's not touching the bulb. They'll come up right on top of that gravel. That's how, once they're cold treated like this, that's all you would need to do. You can also use these jars. This is not one. They make skinnier versions of this where you can put your hyacinths. Work extremely well. You need to wear gloves when you handle these hyacinths. Let me get some real quick. So using the glove to handle hyacinth bulb, they will irritate your skin. The roots just come right out of the bottom, just like that. And if you have a jar that's a little narrower than this, you can just set the bulb right on top of it in the crook of the neck of that jar, and then fill the water up to where it's not touching them, but it's right below them. And they come up super quick and easy that way. I'm gonna put both of mine in a little bit of soil. That's all I'm gonna do. This is a shallow dish here. I'll just put maybe 2 inches in the bottom of that dish, just like that. Get all the clumps out of it. That may be a little too much. We don't need a whole lot. And then I'll take my tulip bulbs. Again, this is not the spacing you would use in the ground. This is spacing that I'm using specific for growing these inside. I'm putting them pretty close together, not touching, but pretty close together, with the pointy end up and the flat part of the bulb down. And I'll fill this out with, you know, I don't know how many this is going to take. Maybe, looks like 9 to 10 would fit into this little, I'm dropping them. Make sure your bulbs are still firm. Sometimes the ones that you leave in the refrigerator for a long time like that, you'll lose a few. There'll be a little green mold on them if they're going bad. I can easily put 9 in here, and I could probably even put 12 right there. And all I'm going to do is take a little bit of soil here and put some soil on them, but I don't mind if I still see the tops of the bulbs, the pointy part of the bulb at all. That's not a problem. Okay, that's exactly how I'm going to leave them, actually, where I can barely see the top of the bulb, just like that, just barely sticking up. We just don't need to do anything more than that. Now, with the tulips and the hyacinths, before I bring them in, I'm actually going to leave them in my garage for a couple weeks. And the reason for that is because if they don't root a little bit before the foliage starts coming up on them, they flop over for me. So I could go ahead and put this in a bright window in my house where the sun, you know, a little direct sun on them late in the day when the sun's going down on the west side the window is perfect. And these bulbs would come up very, very quickly because, like I say, they're ready to go. They're even showing a little bit of color already. But they won't have any roots on them, and they'll come up really quickly, and then frequently they'll just fall over, especially with the sun pulling them one direction. You have to rotate the pot, you know, every few days anyway. But regardless, what I'm going to do is I'll leave this in my garage. I'm in a garage right now at my garden center. I could leave them out here where it's still cool at night and the foliage isn't going to race ahead. I'm going to wait about 2 weeks, and then I'm going to pull one of these out, okay, and I'm going to look at the bottom of it and see if I've got any roots starting to form. Once I start getting some roots forming on the bottom of these, then I'm comfortable bringing them in the house. I'll bring them in the house. They'll quickly come up very quickly. I'll show you these on Instagram as they start coming up. I'll show you in a couple weeks where they're starting to root, and then I'll show you some photos if you follow me on Instagram of how these come up. I'll do the exact same thing with the hyacinths. It doesn't matter, you know, what type of dish that you have. You can go with a deeper bowl than this, but it's unnecessary. I mean, it's almost a waste of potting soil because they don't need a whole lot of room to root. But again, the exact same thing here. I filled the dish up where I still have room to get the bulbs in. These hyacinth bulbs will do the exact same thing. I may get a ring of, let's probably put 6 in here. Again, the spacing is not the spacing that you would use outside. These are starting to break dormancy already. And this one right here, you already got green growth on the top of it. Again, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to cover them up like that. Make sure that the pointy ends are still sticking up. That's very important. And I'll water them in. Make sure your pots have drainage holes in them. Very, very important. Very, very important with bulbs that water is able to escape these containers. But I'll lightly water these. I'm going to leave them in the garage for 2 weeks, and then I'll bring them in the house and put them in a bright window. So again, it's really quick and easy as long as you cold treated your bulb for the appropriate amount of time. Once it's cold treated, that thing is set and ready to go, and it's really almost hard to mess it up. I do like to give them a couple weeks before I bring them in to try to get some roots on the bottom of them. I wouldn't put them out in a solid freeze where that pot could freeze solid, but a garage should be appropriate as long as the nights are cool. It'll stay above freezing, but we'll get pretty cold. That will be helpful to slowing the top growth on the bulb down and allowing the roots to anchor the bulb into that container a little bit so they don't end up flopping over. But you can use any kind of container you want to use. And you can use big giant containers. The main reason I'm using a shallow container is it only takes this big bag of potting soil right here. I could do, you know, I don't know how many I could do without exaggerating, probably 50 of these shallow pots like this with that one bag. If I went to big giant pots and did these, then the cost is going to go up significantly. And these pots, of course, can be reused as many times as you want. And these make great gifts as well. Once they start breaking dormancy, and come up maybe 2 or 3 inches, they're good to go. You know, whoever you're giving them to can't really mess them up at that point as long as they put them in a bright space at their house. You will need to rotate them around because the sun on the window will pull them one direction. But that's pretty much it. Figure out if your bulb needs to be cold treated or not. Again, amaryllis and paper whites you can put directly in. Other bulbs take varying lengths of cold treatment. Tulips take about the longest at 14 weeks. And once they're cold treated in the refrigerator, pot them shallow in a container as close together as you want. I do leave a little separation in between them, and you're good to go. So thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram so you can see how these progress over the next few weeks.